Ms. Arellano, whenever you are ready, Chairman.
Okay. Welcome everybody to the Planning and Zoning meeting, April 2, 2025. We will call the order and do the opening ceremonies. Start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Next is roll call.
Board Member Wadsworth.
Here.
Board Member Broker. Here. Board Member Johnson.
Present.
Board Member Weiss. Chairwoman Arellano.
Here. Okay, next we have approval of the minutes for December 11, 2024 Planning and Zoning meeting.
I motion that we approve the Planning and Zoning meeting minutes from December 1st, 2024.
I second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, next on the agenda is discussion items. Planning and zoning?
Yes. I just wanted to take a few minutes and just kind of follow up like we want to do every meeting and do a little bit of a training. First, I just want to please remind all board members to make sure your mic is on and pull your mic close. If you don't hear it loudly coming across in here, they won't hear it online. So I've had a few issues. Colleagues say, can we really get them to pull those closer? So please be cognitive of that, practice that. I appreciate it. Next, I just want to take a moment and just thank you for your service. It's not easy being on a planning and zoning board. It's a lot of studying, hundreds of pages to review, a lot of work, and I really appreciate what you do because you're the first step in the process of something that staff has sometimes worked on for a year or 2 years, and applicants have worked on for a year or two. And what you do is very important. With that said, I also want to talk about just kind of your roles a little bit and making sure you understand the importance of your role. At the last meeting, kind of after we had a pretty long hearing, we had a lot of public comment. You have a long staff report. It was a long night. The subject came back to the board, and the board really struggled to have a discussion, I guess is probably the proper way, and really struggled more for someone to make a motion to get there. There was a lot of hesitancy to even have that conversation. There was just a lot of silence on that. And it's important on a lot of these planning matters because most of them are quasi-judicial. We've studied that, what's the difference between policy and quasi-judicial. The discussion piece, and Anita will chime in on this, is so important because it establishes the record. It establishes what evidence you guys use to base a decision, how you applied the code in making that decision, which protects the town if there's ever a legal challenge. It's much easier to say, well, you know, each one of these members, here's the basis they made the decision as it relates to the code, than just saying we don't know how they made that decision. So please have the discussion. It's important. It's important to get it on the record. It explains your reasoning. It shows that you took the evidence, because remember, you have to act like a judge in these hearings, impartial, listening to the evidence, the real evidence that's presented, and make a decision on that. Our citizens that come here, you know, they'll sit and listen for 2 or 3 hours. The applicants also have a lot of time and money, and so, you know, most times if it's a variance or anything, they usually have spent a couple of $1,000s in a couple of months to get here, up to even the last applicant, up to over $1 million. So you have the opportunity to have this presented in front of you. So kind of think about that as you do that process. Your part in this is really important, and it's important to the town because you know the town, especially when we get the policy recommendations. Like today, we'll have a policy about setbacks. What does that look like? What should a setback be? And those are kind of more processes where you give more of opinion and less of the fact-based things. I just want to remind you, I think every one of you, just talking with the council members individually, I think and I know this, our council members respect each one of you. And they chose you to be on this because you're professional, you understand what you're doing, and don't be afraid to have that conversation, is all I'm saying. Let's have the conversation. You have a very qualified staff here. I think we have a wonderful staff, a wonderful attorney, our planning department. I do my best to try to serve you. Ask us questions. If you feel like you're stuck and you need clarification because it's not making sense, you can ask us questions. Dig into it. Do that. Use the evidence that was presented. The council laid out most of these things, a policy or ordinances that is a guide for you to use, like in a variance. Remember those 11 steps or 12 steps? I forgot how many there were in there. Use that as your basis. You don't have to go just as how you feel. Use the criteria in front of you. So with that said, please don't take that as anything, but I totally respect you guys, and I really feel you do a good job. And I know the professional each one of you had. Just encourage you just to help make the process go. Please ask the questions, have the discussion. And kind of the last thought, even with a motion, you can make a motion and not support the motion. No, is that wrong? I'm sorry, I make that wrong, incorrect.
So if you make the motion, then you have to vote in favor of the motion. If you second it, you do not.
Thank you. So kind of keep that in mind. It comes back to, does the applicant deserve the vote, for coming here? And really, I think anybody that takes the time to go through the process that we set out, in my mind, I would hope you would see that they would need that vote. Any questions on that? I hope I didn't want to do this in any way that was nothing but respectful to every one of you, because I really appreciate everything you guys do. I really do. Any other thoughts or comments? Go ahead, Ray.
Hey, Paul, actually there was kind of seeing, this is my second meeting, and so seeing how this actually procedurally got to this point, I actually had a question I was going to bring up anyway, so please write into what you're talking about.
No, please, let's do it.
So we as a volunteer group, right, have other lives and jobs. And this stuff is very important and oftentimes does have, as you said, hundreds of pages. This week wasn't too bad, but still a lot. So I wanted to ask whether or not it's possible to get these packets a little bit sooner. Receiving a call at 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon when town hall closes at 6 and then isn't open on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday to come pick this up, then means that if you weren't working right here in town where you could jump right on it, like I happen to be lucky enough to do, the best chance I would have been to pick this up would have been on Monday. Giving me only 2 days to really review it, understand it, educate myself about it before now trying to come to this meeting. So
Thank you. No, that's a great question. So one, if you get the email or we obviously we check with you if you're available for the planning and zoning and you can't pick up your packet, we will deliver it to your door. So you call the staff, and if it's Thursday, I think I've delivered to probably everybody's door at some point in time. We will deliver it to your door.
good, that works. It was one of those I just hopped up and ran down and grabbed it in between a bunch of meetings, and knowing that if I didn't grab it now, I would have been held up. So,
and if you have a preference when the package is ready, if you just want us to deliver it to you, and that is just what you would rather have done, you don't have to come do that. We'll be glad to do that for any of the council or any planning, zoning, or council members. So just let Caroline or Sandy know, we'll do that for you guys. I know you have very good advice. No, you're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions for Paul? Awesome. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. So typically in the discussion section, we go over the updates. Do you want me to do that at the end, Paul, or?
Yeah, we can do that at the end.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and do our ordinances first.
Great. Okay, so first on the agenda as far as ordinances is ordinance number 2025-55.
An ordinance of the Town of Montverde, Florida, amending regulations in Chapter 10 of the Town of Montverde Land Development Code relating to setbacks for accessory structures, providing for codification and severability, providing for the repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Council. I'll kind of start the discussion, then I'll have Lisa jump in and chime in a little bit on this. So we recently had a variance hearing regarding a setback for an accessory structure, and that kind of brought up a little bit of a greater discussion. Do we need to look at our setbacks? And the Council indicated they would like us to take a look, would like planning and zoning to look at this and make a recommendation. And currently our code is for accessory structure is 7.5 foot on the side yard and 15 foot on the rear yard.
25.
Oh, I'm so sorry, 20,
25.
thank you, that's why you're here, Lisa. Thank you. And Lisa, you want to kind of explain what you did here, Lisa, just for,
Sure.
explain the visuals here?
Yes, I'll be happy to. So we created 3 visuals here. This shows a man standing at his property line looking over the fence at a shed that's 12 feet high and meets the current setbacks of 25 feet.
Where did you get the man from?
Just curious. The 1920s.
Looks very dapper.
Oh, this is a program called SketchUp, and they change the person every year. Last year it was a beautiful woman, and this year we have this nicely dressed man. So the next scenario is the same accessory structure setback 15 feet instead of the 25 feet, and what that view looks like to this man. And then the third scenario is at 7.5 feet. So you can see the 3 ideas of what that might look like to a neighbor in the adjacent yard.
So knowing that a house setback is a minimum of 25 feet, is that correct?
Right.
So most people obviously have a bigger not all people have a bigger backyard than that. So you have a side yard where you have a house that's 7.5 feet from the property line, another house 7.5 feet or less. So there's some setbacks less than that on R&D. Then your accessory structure can be 7.5 feet from the side. So the question is, what does that backyard look like? We were struggling, Council. That's why we thought we brought it back. What we did was staff put together a recommendation just solely off our discussion, where if the accessory structure was, how many, 120 and under, is that correct, Lisa?
Right.
If it was under 120 square feet, they can have it match the side yard setback, which would be 7.5, 7.5. And if it was over that, you'll have to tell me again what.
Then you follow the setbacks for that zoning district.
So that's what we came up with. So we want your input and a recommendation to make the council. So staff will be glad to answer any questions.
So, would we also allow then, thanks for the visual, because that does kind of
Again,
help.
could you
see.
pull that just a little bit closer?
Is that better?
That's wonderful, thank you.
I'm sorry. So, would we also allow then to hire fences? Because I'm thinking about, if someone said, hey, I would rather not look at this structure and this change, would we allow then the fence line to go higher to say, hey, I'd rather look at my fence and be more private than seeing someone's, structure with that? Or is that a separate?
Yeah, that wouldn't be a part of this. That would have to go into the fence ordinance section if we want to change
So
the height
someone
of
would
the
still have
fence.
to come, if this went to in place, someone else would have to come in and say, well, I want my fence to be higher for whatever, for whatever reason.
Which we really don't want to get in that at a staff
Yeah.
level where, we're starting to make, because this is here, you got to do this and
No,
that.
and that was why I
Sure.
was asking. I understand. Sure. I was just thinking about what could happen, implications from
Most
making
definitely.
those decisions. Like, could someone
That's
could
a
say,
good
geez, I
question.
don't want to, because before the visual was not quite so close.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay. Yeah, right. So
What
it's
is
just
the,
a little different.
yeah, what is for the board, what is the maximum height of an accessory structure? Do you know that?
Should be right here.
Is it 14 feet?
I think that's right.
Okay.
And this one is 12.
Then our
in the
maximum
visual.
height in town for fences is 6 feet.
Sean is joining us on the computer, by the
Okay,
way.
14 feet for the accessory. Thank you, Sean.
Yes.
Have the setback from the side always been 7.5 and not
Yes.
5?
Well,
Because
in
I was
some
told-
cases it's 5, like Willow Ridge. In the PUD, we allowed a 5-foot setback
Okay.
for that PUD, but generally speaking, it's 7.5-foot side setback.
And on a side yard, it is 25 feet on a side yard too.
On
Or
a
corner,
corner-
actually the
corner
corner
lot.
lot, it would be 25 foot on the corner that fronts the road. So you have that little piece in there too.
So I'm assuming then, because we're assuming these are not, the setbacks from a rear yard are not wetlands or lakes or.
Correct.
Because it doesn't, I mean, I'm just reading to see if there was any, I know that makes common sense, but I figured I would ask the question that, is there something similar that would have to be updated to indicate if you're on wetlands or lakefront or whatever, that you'd have to be X feet from high water mark or whatever
Yeah,
it is?
you're correct. There is a section in the code that says if you abut to a wetland or a lake, you have to stay 50 feet off the property line with the exception of a pool. I believe in a
Yeah.
pool cage can be 25 feet.
Yeah. Okay, so that would be a separate,
Yeah, so if
Okay.
they backed up to the wetland, then 50 foot would be their minimum,
okay, so that.
regardless of this.
Regardless of this, okay, that's
Right.
what I was trying to understand is.
Yes,
When we say rear
that's a good
setback,
question.
okay, all right, sorry.
So on the section 1082D of the ordinance, maybe I'm misunderstanding something because it says that accessory buildings greater than 120 square feet shall conform to all applicable side yard building zone setbacks of the applicable zoning district and a minimum of 15 feet of the rear property line. That doesn't make sense if the rear setback is 25.
Sure, so what we're saying, you could put a 10 by 12 within 7.5 feet, and then if you're, for instance, if you're an R1L, it is 25 feet. Medium density might be a little bit closer, is it? I don't know. if
It's
that-
25 feet
If
as
it's
well.
25 feet, is there any other zoning district where that's closer, I guess, besides the PUD?
Commercial.
Oh, commercial, okay.
What is it in commercial?
Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, I think it's only a couple feet in commercial.
I want to say 3, but let me double
I
check.
think that's
Oh,
right,
you know
because
what?
I
It
think we
is
did,
3.
we did yours,
yeah.
it's 3.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, 'cause when
Is
I
there
read
any
this-
other zoning that we're not thinking of?
So a PUD would override this because that's its own
Right.
zoning district. ORC, you'd have to look at ORC, and, which is probably still the 3.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the overlay, does that affect anything?
That's not what this is saying though. So it's saying if it's greater than 120 square feet, so greater than 10 by 12, then it shall conform to the applicable side yard building setbacks of the applicable zoning district, which would say be 7.5 feet from the side yard in general,
Correct.
and a minimum of 15 feet of the rear property line. So are we changing the 25 feet to 15 feet?
Well, what we're doing is just making a suggestion here, but
Yeah.
it's either 7 and, we're suggesting scenarios. One is 7.5 feet setback from the rear property line. One is 15, and then, or staying at the current 25 feet.
So yeah, that's what we're asking you. And we did look up, and actually it's side yard, that's 3, but in commercial, it's 25 as well.
On the rear, the
Side.
side, the 3.
Yeah, the side's the 3.
And does the overlay district affect that, or in,
We'll have to look at that.
No, the overlay district is mostly design criteria.
Yeah, I think it's more aesthetics on the overlay. I don't think we change any code.
so more like each
Yeah.
scenario will be looked at?
And-
Okay.
And as you have this discussion, this really, it's not an urgent item. If you, staff is completely fine if you want to go out and look at some different sheds and the heights and kind of see what that feels like from standing at your neighbor's property, or that's completely up to you, I mean, or if you think you want to make a recommendation, of course, staff would do that as well. or
So,
entertain that.
just out of curiosity, like how many, I don't remember off the top of my head how many times we've gotten requests that are for variances to go beyond the 25 feet, or closer, sorry, to the setback. Is it like an influx, and that's why we're kind of looking at that, or was like just a one-off thing.
No, not very many, as far as variance requests, but we've had some people that have struggled to put the shed they would like in their backyards. So if you know, some of the houses on the 8th or 9th are medium density zoning, so their lots are a little bit smaller and some not as deep, and depending on
They
where
just don't have that
yeah,
depth.
so what you could have is if you have a yard that says only has a 30-foot wide backyard and they don't have a lot of side yard, they're kind of stuck of, you know, the shed's got to be right up to their house versus kind of in the
Okay.
middle or the backyard.
Okay.
I mean, it's nothing, it's just one of those things, you know, well, people do have a larger backyard, and, you know, from aesthetics, would that look better versus having the shed right on their back porch versus a little bit in the yard, but that affects the neighbors, you know, so it's an interesting circle of a conversation.
And I'd like to add too, we always recommend that if someone is putting in a shed, that they plant some foundational shrubs around it just to make it look a little bit more appealing.
So the only real change is the changing from 25 to 15 feet?
That's right.
Everything else as it stands in the current.
That's right.
Or if it's
Or
if it's under 120 square feet, it would be 7.5, how we have it written, correct?
Well, we
Oh, it's
have
always been.
15 in here,
Okay.
but 7.5
backyard?
is there for your consideration as well. We just wanted to give you all three scenarios so you can think about it.
Well, the one, I'm
Best.
sorry, maybe I misunderstood, because it does say if it's less than 120, it's minimum of 7.5 feet from side and rear, but you said 15 if it's less than, this is saying 7.5 feet on section 2D. That doesn't look like a change because it's not underlined or anything, so that's exactly how
So
it
that's how
stands
it
today.
is, yes.
Okay.
I apologize, that was my mistake on that.
So
So the
the size and the height, that's already been established and
Correct.
already been.
Correct.
So why are we going from, why are we going from 25 to 13?
That's just a recommendation.
25 to 15.
To 15. Yeah, just, we wanted you to look at the setback and take a look, because, you know, if you put a larger shed in, say a 20 by 15 shed, and you have a 40-foot yard, you put it in the backyard. So it does limit people from putting sheds in, but that may be okay. You know, it's just, you know, we just want a recommendation or thought on that, because it has come up in staff meetings, and people have applied for stuff and haven't been able to put a shed in where they wanted to put it in, or in places. Most people just move it and kind of stick it on the side of the yards, but, you know, it's not always that aesthetically appealing either to have it shoved up to the house.
Yeah, aesthetically, I think the 15 looks the best, ironically, because I think the 25 is just kind of stuck out there, you know, right in the middle.
You mentioned at, Anita, at one of the board meetings that the legislature is considering legislation concerning sheds and extra buildings. Aren't they that to allow people to have whatever they want?
That's accessory dwelling units. So if the legislature's considering a law that would require, local governments essentially would lose control over accessory dwelling units. So if a property, a residential property, was not in a planned unit development, then by right, they could have an accessory dwelling unit on their property. Yes.
But that has to be set back for 25, correct?
Accessory dwelling units would
It's
have
different.
to meet the zoning setbacks.
Have we had any feedback from anybody in the community about pros and cons?
No, this is the first hearing, so that's probably the next step, is to take some public comment, and we have a wonderful back row here tonight.
So just to be clear, we are proposing moving the rear setback to 7.5 feet for a 120 square foot shed, or 15 feet if it's larger than 120 square feet. That's the change that we're,
Only in part. So the only change is it's currently 7.5 feet if it's 120 square feet or less.
okay, so
But if
just
it's
the
over
underlying portion.
120, then we're recommending that the setback for the rear yard be 15 rather than 25.
So in the case of the variance request that we looked at in December and approved, that still wouldn't address that situation. We approved much closer than that.
Correct.
So we had gotten him closer, but not to where he ended up getting with the variance, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we did establish, Sean might know this, a maximum accessory building size, if I recall right. Didn't we do that last year sometime?
It's 800 square feet.
800 square
It's
feet.
800.
Okay, yeah, because it used to be up to 50% of the size of the house or something along
I
that
think it
line.
was 60%.
Okay.
Or
So
40, it was 40.
Well, it still is, it's 800 square feet or 50% of the square footage of the primary structure, whichever is less.
F less, correct.
Yeah, it used to be that you could have an accessory dwelling unit that was equal to the entire ground floor of the principal structure.
Wow.
But that was changed.
Or a shop.
Yes. So Chair Arlano, at this point, you probably appropriate to take public comment, then
Yep.
you could bring it back to the
For
group
us.
to
Yep.
make a recommendation.
All right, I'll open it up for public comment. Here we go.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Mike Wooden, 17635 Broad Street. Yeah, we do need to change it. 15 feet sounds like it's, a reasonable distance right there. And 7.5, you leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about, how about if you wanted to put a mother-in-law suite in? Would it be 25 from the back or would it be 15? Okay. So,
That's the accessory structure.
That's the dwelling unit.
That would be an accessory.
I'd say I
dwelling
wanted
unit.
to add a 1.5 car garage on the side of my house for a boat or a classic car or something. What would be, you'd be 7.5 feet.
And it would be the 15 feet from the rear property line, provided it did not exceed the
But it
square
wouldn't have to
footage.
be any distance from the existing home that I own, right?
No.
It would just have to be 7.5.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Andrew Elam, 17175 Ridgewood Avenue. I think it's a good compromise. I think that what you guys are presenting is great. My only issue I can see is for us, I live in a rural area. We live on a 10-acre property. So things like this are being applicable or are being applied to, my neighbor's like 1,000 yards away. So if I wanted to put, like, let's say, an accessory dwelling or like a shed or something, I still have to follow this, which is more applicable to, the neighborhoods, and we kind of have a different situation because we live far from each other. Because like I want to build like a 800 square feet like accessory unit to put like cars and stuff in, but I'm gonna have to follow the exact same rules as somebody who lives in, just a neighborhood.
Well, remind me, I don't think what it's saying is it just means you have to be
That's your
a
minimum.
Right.
So you can pull it in closer,
Correct.
it can be closer.
Yeah.
It's just saying, so if you had someone, I think what I'm hearing you saying, you tell me if I misunderstood, is that you're worried about, like, do I have to have it all the way back, thousands of feet away or whatever it is, right? Or hundreds of feet away versus you can come closer to your house. It's just the minimum setback, so
Yeah.
you have to have a minimum of 15 feet from your rear.
I think my idea is I'd like to build this structure like on the side of my property, and my neighbor, if I wanted to be closer than 7 feet or 7.5 feet, to my property line, even though my neighbor is far, far away, I still have to, utilize the same rules that are being used within like a neighborhood. So like my idea of wanting to put this on my property, I have to probably have to come and apply for a variance if I wanted to get it deeper, than 7.5 feet. Right.
I'm
No?
trying to understand your question, because if your property line is your property line, right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter how close or far away your next neighbor is.
Yeah.
The edge of your property is what we're talking about, where you think about a little
Right.
box, right? And then if you're saying you have a very wide lot, let's say you have a very wide lot, and the side yard is 20 feet from your house to your property line.
Yeah.
I don't think what it's saying is it's 7.5. You have to be 7.5 feet from your house. It's saying 7.5 feet from the property line on the side of your house. So you can't, just because you don't have a neighbor doesn't mean you can't go over your property line, right? So you
Right.
can put a fence structure or
It's
a
just
structure.
from the edge of your parcel.
Right.
Yeah, so let's say if I wanted to build it deeper, like 3 feet from my property line on the side.
You want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And really, if you think that's kind of reasonable, because at 7.5 feet is a
Yeah.
small distance, like if you want to paint the side, you want
Right.
to be able to do without trespassing on your property, or if he puts a barbed wire, or if he comes in, saw your shed, and he wants a shed next to your shed,
Right.
at least gives you guys a 15-foot difference in case it burns or something happens.
Okay.
So that's usually a pretty reasonable standard for that. In fact, I think there are some things in the building codes when you get less than that, and please don't quote me verbatim, but the materials get more into the fire code stuff for the fire code spreading, where most sheds are kind of a wood structure sometimes.
Yeah.
You kind of start getting into things where under the building codes, as
Okay.
you get that closer, you don't have that fire separation, as they call it. So generally that's a pretty acceptable number, that 7.5 or 5, depending on what the materials are. So.
Okay.
I know it's more, if you get closer than 5, you get into that problem, I believe is what it is.
Okay.
You only have a 10-foot separation.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Anyone else?
I think you bring up a good point about the 15 feet, and it probably does look better to have it towards the back of your property. But
Mhm.
I would say no more than 15 feet. I would think
Oh,
15
yeah.
feet is better than the 7.5 rear setback.
Yeah, for sure. Any other public comment? No? Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good compromise. I think it'll look good aesthetically for sure.
So,
Here you are. You ready?
And Ms. Weiss, could you pull the mic close to you for, thank you.
sorry. I make a motion that we accept the ordinance 2025-15 with a 15-foot rear setback from the rear property line. Does that cover it, Anita?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Alrighty. On to ordinance 2025-46.
An ordinance extending and increasing the corporate limits of the town of Montverde, county of Lake, state of Florida pursuant to the voluntary annexation provisions of section 171.044 Florida statutes, annexing 1.82 plus or minus acres of real property not embraced within the present limits of the town of Montverde, providing for findings, providing a legal description and a map, directing the town manager to record certified copies of this ordinance after approval with the clerk of the circuit court, the county manager of Lake County, and the Secretary of State of Florida, providing for conflicts and severability, providing for scrivener's errors, setting an effective date.
All right. If I could, we're gonna, all the next ordinances are related to the same property, but we do have to take them one at a time, but obviously I will do one presentation unless I'm asked otherwise by our board. Okay. So in front of you is a request from the applicant to annex in 10 acres of property into the corporate limits of Montverde. It will be a part of a larger piece of property that is already in the town of Montverde. The existing property is on Ridgewood Avenue, and it consists of 58.31 acres. And I think kind of backs up to Magnolia Terrace and extends out to 455, which you should be able to see from the map there. The request to kind of do this as he wants to develop, to kind of do a cohesive development while they're bringing in. There's multiple parcels that were purchased, and he would like to annex those in. those 10 acres into the town limits so that he could then develop the property. This is going to be a multi-step process, just to let you know. So this is kind of the first step. This is the initial annexation ordinance. If it's approved or denied or whatever the action is, and if he wants to, it'll go to council. Council will have the first hearing on it. Then we will pause that process. Coming back to you at the next meeting, you will have likely will be the comp plan amendment. That's going to be the accompanying document that will go with that. So the comp plan will actually be the amendment that will also discuss the zoning, more than likely discuss the zoning for it. It's not going to be the actual final zoning, but there may be some written language in there. But that's going to be what goes up to the state possibly to get transmitted and make that decision. So I'm just kind of briefly, I know there's more technical. I'll have Lisa share that to you. But I just want you to know that this is going to kind of be a multi-stage process. Then, of course, you're going to have the PUD, probably zoning or zoning request come through for this. You'll have the site plan, preliminary, plat site plan, and you'll have a final plat, just as we do with the other process. So just want to let you know on that process. So staff has reviewed this. We do recommend this get approved. It's in the benefit of the town to see this cohesively developed. The other advantage is the developer or the owner intent is to use this for a residential property. Again, we're not going to get heavily into the zoning. That'll be at the future. But the intent is residential, and the current property is zoned for light manufacturing in the county.
I saw that.
And so there's a huge benefit from the town, just not only from what could go there, but also from the number of units that could go there, et cetera, et cetera. So this is contiguous to the current town limits, so it meets all their criteria for zoning, and it seems appropriate for the town of Montverde to annex this in. Sorry, I said the word zoning, to annex it in. Staff would be glad to answer any questions, and if Anita, Lisa, or Sean, you have anything else you need to add on that, please feel free to do so.
I don't think so. I think that was well said, Paul. I think from our perspective, from a planner's perspective, it does give you, the town, a more control of your destiny. As Paul has indicated clearly, and rightfully so, this is a long process. It's intended to be that way. When anytime you annex something in, there's hearings, and it has to start somewhere. So this is the first hearing to do that. As Paul has indicated, that it is multi-step, it's multi-phase. There will need to be a land use amendment that comes along with this, as well as a code change too that would come along with this. And your job tonight is, of course, is to see if this is, to make a recommendation if you think this is in the interest of the town. And it would begin the process. So there's, as Paul has indicated, there's there's multiple parts to this that still have to come, but this is your beginning part of the process and to make the recommendation.
Thank you, Sean. So Ms. Arellano, probably just going kind of through a procedural step, the next step would be to invite the applicant up to, or the applicant representative to come up, and then public comment, then bring it back to the board for questions of staff.
Okay.
Or debate among yourselves.
I'd like to welcome the applicant to come up and speak.
Good evening. For the record, Logan Opsahl, 215 North Yola Drive. Thank you to Sean and Paul for the clarification. I think the most important thing to consider here is that this is what's being proposed, an annexation to make a cohesive development. We certainly think it makes some sense and is in the interest of the town. It allows for better access, and most importantly, I think for an annexation consideration, to be able to be within the jurisdiction of the town and avail ourselves to those process procedures and requirements. I said I'd be brief, but I am happy to answer any questions. And if it's a pleasure of the chairwoman, I'll maybe just reserve a minute or two to respond to any other additional questions we might hear in public comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I missed what you said it was currently zoned as. I'm sorry.
Light manufacturing.
Light.
County light industrial, I think, is the
Okay.
is the current
Light
zone.
industrial.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up for public comment. bring it back, for discussion within us.
I will say thank you for showing this because I could not figure out for the life of me why there was this little teeny tiny strip. Because the first one just shows this little tiny strip, so I didn't get that big visual, so I'm.
No, thank you. Yeah, we had
that.
Lisa put that together because as we were going through the packet, I did notice that. There is a house, I'm pointing here, that means nothing. There's a house that you can see that's not included at the very top. So that kind of to the right there where it meets up to the town limits on the road there, that house is not included. So it's just the outline that you see highlighted there.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're talking about that first one, which is that 1.82, which is just that little teeny strip, but I know
Correct.
we're going to talk about each one. It just, I now can understand why that's in there, so thank you.
Thank you.
So Sean, on your staff report, you wrote that you recommend if the minimum lot size is 1 acre per the requirements of LDC section 1013. Can you address that? I mean, would that change with the, with some of the other proceedings that go on, or how does that?
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what Paul was talking about with the, the multi-phase approach. That part of the LVC, the good part about your code, although sometimes we talk about antiquated parts of it, this is not necessarily antiquated because it's sort of a stopgap measure with something that's obviously a very big concern of the town, and that is density. It's something being brought into the town, and what kind of density could entail. So sort of the beauty of this, although it does, it is an extra step, would be just like what was done for Willow Ridge. There was an exception made, bringing it in to be annexed. They made the exception for Willow Ridge. So you would have to, procedurally, make the code change to accept this property into the town as well. Normally, so it's from the applicant's perspective, it's another step, but at the same time, it does give you, the town, a little more control too. So that is one of those steps, as well as designating, giving it a designated land use category, which we'll see what the applicant's proposing would be, that would also be part of the next steps. I hope that answers your question.
Sean, are you saying that our current code, section 10-13A, states that any annexed land after March 7, 2000 has to be annexed in with the 1 acre requirement? And that would be R1L.
That is in the code, and that I'm not sure exactly when that was put in there. At the time when the Green Book, as we call it, was put together, I know Anita knows this very well. There were a lot of ordinances. Some people had said there were ordinances that said this, some said it was others. We went, of course, basically what we found had actually been recorded. So this dates back to that period of time, I believe, unless, Anita, you may have a different recollection. I could be wrong on that, but the answer is yes. So that'll be something that'll have to be addressed, because, obviously we don't want to be inconsistent with your code or your comp plan.
That portion will be addressed in the next 2 phases that come before you, because that's why it's going to pause at council as the other phases get caught up. Could you pull that speaker back? We're getting feedback from you. Thank you. So that'll be in the process as a change to come.
I don't see anything negative about this proposal. I mean, we all drive along 455. It would be much nicer to see homes than industrial, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think this would be a benefit to the town.
That and, the town having control. So it's a win-win in my opinion. As we get closer, we'll define, like Paul said, more details and stuff, but I agree.
So the adjoining property currently, the 60 acres, is R1L.
That is correct.
by annexing this in per the code, it would also have to be R1L initially at least, but that could then be requested to be changed later.
I'll let Anita address that, just, I don't want to say something wrong.
No, so procedurally, it comes in without a zoning. And that's one of the applications they will be making is a zoning request. So the next step, if it's annexed, they get a future land use designation under your comprehensive plan, and they ask for a zoning. It comes in with no zoning. It still retains its Lake County zoning, but they wouldn't be able to develop under that. So they apply for a zoning. We anticipate a PUD zoning request, but that could change. But that's what they would apply for. They do not automatically get an R1L zoning.
Okay, I was seeing here it is on page 7 of the staff report where it says the existing 58.31 is R1L.
That is
Yes,
correct.
that's
Proposed
correct.
9.91 acres is R1L, according to the map that's in the staff report.
That would be incorrect.
Yeah,
So
we apologize, that's probably incorrect.
the existing is the R1L, and if they want to change that, they would have to apply for a change. But the portion of the properties being annexed into the town will apply for an initial town zoning. It doesn't come in with anything.
Okay, thank you.
Can we make a recommendation that it come in with R1L?
No, it's up to the applicant to submit an application, and then you base your recommendation on what they've requested.
What are the risks of doing that? Any? I mean, are there any risks of what could be developed there if it's incorporated into Montverde?
Correct.
But it doesn't have a zoning, so you're saying they couldn't
They could not develop it until they receive
had
it.
a zoning.
Yes,
And
they
the
have to
zoning-
get your future land use, they have to have a town of Montverde future land use, and then a compatible and consistent zoning designation.
And that would be determined by the council.
It'll come to you first for a recommendation and then go to the council for adoption.
So even though now it's, like manufacturing, it would come in no zoning, so they couldn't develop a bunch of manufacturing
They
stuff
could not go
at
do
all.
anything.
They couldn't build houses, they couldn't build anything until that is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
And that process is gonna come to light as we have the next
Yep.
couple steps, and that's kind of why I said we're moving through this process to kind of get some comments, and it's gonna pause as the other things catch up a little bit, because they obviously want clarity too, because they don't want to bring something in and say, okay, you can have one home per 5 acres or something along that line. But if you look at what the other existing zoning is, it's up to the applicant what to bring in. But Bella Clina, I think, does or the developers who develop Bella Clina, I'll put that way, not Bella Clina, do a quality product, and they're obviously conscientious of, I think will be of the existing areas.
Is it okay to ask the applicant to say what they want to do with it, or is that not okay to ask?
So at this stage, it's just
Okay.
about whether or not you
Okay.
believe it should be in the town or not.
Yep.
I'm in agreement with the staff. I think we should approve ordinance number 2025.
I'm not sure if is your mic on there?
How about that?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Sorry about that. I'm in agreement with the staff that we approve ordinance number 2025-46, annexing in the property.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Alrighty. So now we're on to ordinance 2025-47.
An ordinance extending and increasing the corporate limits of the town of Montverde, county of Lake, state of Florida pursuant to the voluntary annexation provisions of section 171.044 Florida statute, annexing 5 parcels of real property not embraced within the present limits of the town of Montverde, providing for findings, providing a legal description and a map, directing the town manager to record certified copies of this ordinance after approval with the clerk of the circuit court, the county manager of Lake County, and the Secretary of State of Florida, providing for conflicts and severability, providing for scrivener's errors, setting an effective date.
And same staff report as last time. I obviously won't redo. It's, I would request you ask the applicant if they have anything they want to add in public comment and bring it back to the board.
Would you like to come back up again?
Put it on the record. For the remaining ordinances, I'll defer to the board to vote on these items since they're together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Any public comment? Come on up.
I guess my question is this tied in with the Bella Colina development in any way?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Is this property being annexed in, is this any way tied in with Bella Colina?
So it will be its own. Bella Colina is in the county. This will be in the town limits, so it's going to be in their own subdivision. We have not had a PUD submitted. There may or may not be some tie-in to that. That we can't answer at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, we'll bring it back to us. So it's pretty much same as what we just talked about.
Yeah, for all of these are basically the exact same scenario,
Yeah,
just
we
different
gain
parcels
control,
of land.
We lose that manufacturing zoning, so I think it's a win-win.
Yep. We still can't develop.
Yep.
Have to get the zoning. Yep, same thing. Yep.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2025-47. We can't do them all at the same time, though,
I
right?
know.
I'll second that.
Alrighty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Alrighty, we're on to ordinance 2025-48.
An ordinance extending and increasing the corporate limits of the town of Montverde, county of Lake, state of Florida pursuant to the voluntary annexation provisions of section 171.044 Florida statute, annexing two parcels of real property not embraced within the present limits of the town of Montverde, providing for findings, providing a legal description and a map, directing the town manager to record certified copies of this ordinance after approval with the clerk of the circuit court, the county manager of Lake County, and the Secretary of State of Florida, providing for conflicts and severability, providing for scrivener's errors, setting an effective date.
Then chair staff will defer to its last presentation
Yeah.
as well. That would ask you to do public comment one more time.
About
Two more
do
times.
public comment one more time? Two more times. All right, I'll bring it on back. So here we go again.
I'll motion that we approve ordinance 2025-48.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Alrighty, we're on to ordinance number 2025-49.
An ordinance extending and increasing the corporate limits of the town of Montverde, county of Lake, state of Florida pursuant to the voluntary annexation provisions of section 171.044 Florida statute, annexing real property not embraced within the present limits of the town of Montverde, providing for findings, providing a legal description and a map, directing the town manager to record certified copies of this ordinance after approval with the clerk of the circuit court, the county manager of Lake County, and the Secretary of State of Florida, providing for conflicts and severability, providing for scrivener's errors, setting an effective date.
Alrighty, public comment? All right, we'll bring it back.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2025-49.
I second.
Alrighty, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Alrighty. Next, we have updates. Town manager update?
We will, we have a lot of little different council meetings. I think we have 3 in April going on, just for various things we have coming forward. So we'll contact you on the next date. We're going to eventually get back to a regular schedule, I promise. It's just, we got a lot of stuff that requires different hearing after different hearing. So we'll contact you at least 3 to 4 weeks before we have the next hearing. So anticipate maybe something at the end of April, beginning of May. It just depends on where we're at with getting things processed. We do have obviously a couple more large projects, but I apologize. I will get you guys back to a regular schedule as soon as possible, but we probably may end up with possibly up to 2 plan zoning hearings coming forward, depending on how things work out per month for just a little bit. Last, I just want to, if you haven't seen, we're starting to kick off our centennial celebration, so it's going to be an exciting time for the town. Please show up to the concert, spread the word around. We got a concert this Saturday coming up just to hang out. Then we're going to do a town picnic for May 3rd at noon, do a countywide or a citywide town picnic. So just kind of keep your eyes out and help us spread the word as leaders in the community. I appreciate that. So thank you. Volunteer days coming up, all kinds of good stuff.
I didn't know about the town picnic.
It's on that little sheet with all
Is
the
it?
stuff coming up. Yeah, but we're going to send out a big flyer
Okay.
right before that. Then so I think that's on the 3rd, and it's going to be probably 11 from 3. We got our waste pro guys are going to come do burgers and hot dogs for the town, and staff will be out there handing them out. And we're just going to try to put out some of our games for Montverde, so that's coming up. April 26th, probably around 9. We're gonna, for Arbor Day, we're gonna do hopefully a city or a townwide volunteer day. The butterfly garden, we got 85% of the pavers in. It's gonna be ready for planting, so we're gonna ask everybody to kind of show up with a shovel and put 2,000 plants in the ground in 2 hours, and that way we don't have to do it for 3 weeks. But it'll be a great opportunity for everybody to participate. So just a lot of neat stuff coming up. So kind of pay attention, please, and help us spread the word. We really need that, just to encourage your neighbors to get out, and let's bring our community together and do some community things together. I think would be amazing.
Awesome.
Yes. You've been by, walking. Perfect. If you haven't walked by, it's on the backside of the sports court there, over there, and I think it's going to be a wonderful asset for our community, and the whole park's starting to tie in. We're going to have our library, thanks to John, our library is really getting ahead of schedule. I think most of the construction piece is probably going to be over by the end of this month. The major stuff, we're going to start moving stuff in there, so possibly end of June, early July. I hate saying a date right now, but you never know with construction. Yeah. So anyway, it's coming up. So we just have a lot of wonderful things for our community coming forward. So it's going to be a fun year for our town. So please help and be positive.
It's on public record now, so we're going to hold you to it. June,
I said
July.
June-ish, July-ish, August, Government, June is August or September. Thank you.
No, it is exciting times. Lots of nice things coming to town, and all the events too. So it's awesome that the town offers that for everybody. Okay, next we have the town planner update.
No, okay. Sean says nothing to report.
Unless Lisa, you have something on this.
Well, I was just going to say we continue to work on a lot of zoning clearances. We're still working on Willow Ridge single-family homes. They're coming in, and lots of fences and the typical type of zoning clearances. So that's all we have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, one other thing, I think all the board received their new shirts. Please try to wear those at future meetings. Just it has our new Centennial logo. You saw we hung some flags. We're actually going to our signs. We refreshed them outside. We're going to hang that Centennial logo for the rest of the year, maybe a little bit longer on all those signs around, including in the roundabout. So just to really showcase our town. So help us out with that. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
I just have to say it looks great. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, town attorney update.
No update, thank you.
No update? Okey-doke. So last but not least is just the adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Is that what the- Okay.